She stepped into the dealership in worn jeans and a plain white t-shirt, her eyes scanning the gleaming rows of luxury cars. "Excuse me," she said calmly. "I'm interested in one of your vehicles." The salesman gave her a once-over, his expression shifting to thinly veiled contempt. "I think you might be in the wrong place," he sneered, gesturing vaguely toward the exit. "These start at $300,000. Snickers echoed from a nearby desk. Curious customers glanced up. Her cheeks burned with quiet embarrassment. Without a word, she turned and walked out. The following morning, a Rolls-Royce Phantom glided to a silent stop in front of the same dealership. Its polished chrome gleamed in the early light, commanding attention. As the back door opened, the salesman's jaw went slack. He never saw it coming. Boston Luxury Motors stood like a shrine to excess, its glass facade catching the morning sun, revealing rows of automotive dreams. Porsche, Bentley, Aston Martin, Ferrari, each model rarer and more expensive than the next. Margaret Collins, Maggie to those who truly knew her, stepped through the doors, her brown ponytail swinging with quiet rhythm. She wore the same white tee and jeans from the day before.
No designer logos.
No heavy makeup, just her. At 35, Maggie carried the kind of self-assurance that comes not from money, but from purpose. Her modest outfit gave no hint of the woman behind it, the founder of the Collins Foundation for Children with Disabilities, a non-profit that had reshaped countless young lives. Long before meeting her husband, she'd built the foundation from the ground up, fueled by her background in special needs development and a heart that didn't know how to quit. Now, her gaze fell on a midnight blue coupe, sleek and stunning, displayed on a raised platform. It would be the perfect gift for her sister Caroline, who had recently turned 40, and more importantly, had just beaten breast cancer. Caroline had always dreamed of driving a luxury car. Maggie was about to make that dream real. She could afford it easily. Her foundation's growth, along with her private investments, had left her financially secure. Not that anyone ever suspected. Across the showroom, Blake Thompson straightened his blue tie and smoothed his navy suit jacket. As the dealership's sales manager, he considered himself a master of reading people. And from the moment he spotted Maggie, he made a snap judgment. He smirked, nodding slightly to his colleagues. This would be entertaining. "Good morning," Maggie said with a smile to a young salesman walking toward her. "Welcome to Boston Luxury Motors," the young man said brightly. "I'm Daniel. Is there a particular model you're interested in today?" Before she could answer, Blake stepped in smoothly. "I'll take it from here, Daniel," he said, flashing a smile that didn't touch his eyes. Then he turned to Maggie. "Looking for directions, ma'am?" And just like that, her second visit to the dealership began, one that none of them would forget. "Actually," Maggie said, still pleasant, "I'm interested in that midnight blue coupe." She pointed toward the $285,000 vehicle on display. Blake's expression stiffened. He'd seen it before. People wandering in to fantasize, wasting everyone's time. With quotas looming and real buyers arriving later, he had no patience for this. "That's the limited edition Azure," he said slowly, each word laced with condescension. "Only 15 made this year." He paused. "Perhaps I could direct you to our pre-owned division, 3 blocks that way." She caught the way his eyes flicked over her clothes, landing on her worn sneakers. He didn't need to say it. She knew the look. She'd seen it 1,000 times. "I'd love to take a closer look," she said, unbothered. "May I see the interior?" Blake's jaw tensed. Behind him, 2 other salesmen exchanged amused glances. "The Azure is by appointment only," he said smoothly, lying without hesitation. "Our more serious clients usually schedule private viewings." Just then, a couple in designer clothes stepped into the showroom. Blake's posture shifted like a switch had flipped. "If you'll excuse me," he said curtly, already turning away, "Daniel can get you a brochure." He strode toward the newcomers, arms open wide. "Mr. and Mrs. Harrington, what a pleasure to see you again." Daniel lingered, awkward and apologetic. He looked barely 25, his suit a little too big, his smile a little too sincere. "I'm really sorry about that," he said softly. "Would you still like to hear about the Azure?" "I would, thank you," Maggie replied, her tone warm. As Daniel began describing the vehicle specs, Maggie watched out of the corner of her eye as Blake led the Harringtons, without appointment, right to the Azure. He opened the door like a game show host. "That's quite all right," she said gently to the flustered Daniel. "I get how this works." Across the floor, Blake was in full performance mode. "This model has an 8-month waitlist," he told Mrs. Harrington, "but I've reserved one just for our VIP clients." She ran her fingers along the buttery leather. "It's lovely, but I'm not sure about the color. We can talk about custom interiors," Blake said, ever the charmer. Maggie approached, calm and composed. She stopped a few feet away, her voice steady. "Excuse me," she said, looking directly at Blake. "I'd still like to discuss purchasing this model." Blake turned, his face flushed red. "As I mentioned earlier," Blake said, irritation bubbling beneath his polished exterior, "this vehicle is currently being shown to these clients. Perhaps you could return another time or, as I suggested, explore our used inventory." The Harringtons glanced uneasily between Blake and Maggie. "I'm specifically interested in this car," Maggie said calmly. "It's a birthday gift for my sister." Blake stepped slightly away from the couple, lowering his voice but not his condescension. "Look, I understand people like to window shop, to dream a little, but this is a professional environment. That vehicle costs more than most homes. I've been patient, but you're disrupting a legitimate sale." A hush was spreading across the showroom as nearby customers subtly tuned in. Daniel lingered just outside the growing circle, visibly anxious. "I'm prepared to make a cash purchase today," Maggie replied, her composure unwavering. And just like that, Blake's restraint snapped. He let out a short, incredulous laugh that bounced off the glass and steel. Heads turned. "A cash purchase?" His voice rose deliberately. "This isn't a flea market. We're talking about nearly $300,000. People who can afford vehicles like these don't walk in off the street looking like..." He waved a hand toward her sneakers and jeans. Maggie felt heat rise to her cheeks, but not from shame. It was a deeper burn, the slow, steady flare of anger. Not for herself. She had armor for this, but for every person who'd been dismissed for how they looked. "I believe my money spends the same as anyone else's," she said, her voice quiet but pointed. Blake stepped forward, looming over her now. "Let me be absolutely clear," he said, no longer bothering with pleasantries. "You are wasting my time. If you want a serious discussion, make an appointment. Come dress d'appropriately. Otherwise, please leave." The entire floor had gone silent. The Harringtons had retreated a step, visibly uneasy. "Is there a problem here?" A new voice interrupted, cutting through the tension like a blade. The dealership's owner, Richard Mason, approached, eyes narrowed, tone deceptively calm. Blake quickly straightened. "No issue, sir. I was just explaining to this woman that we typically operate by appointment only, for qualified buyers." Richard gave Maggie a brief once-over, his expression unreadable. The air was thick with expectation. "I see. Ms. Collins," Maggie said evenly. "Margaret Collins. Well, Miss Collins, perhaps there's been a misunderstanding. Our clientele generally understand the exclusivity involved in..." "Oh, I understand perfectly," she said, steel in her voice. "Your sales manager made your policies very clear." Blake moved in again, his tone dipped in syrup and scorn. "If you're truly interested, which I doubt, call ahead next time. Bring documentation, and maybe dress the part. These cars," he swept a hand dramatically around the showroom, "aren't for just anyone." A quiet murmur rippled through the floor. Someone chuckled. Maggie took in the judging stares, the smug confidence on Blake's face, and the silent approval of the owner beside him. She had experienced prejudice before, but rarely with such brazen arrogance. "I see," she said softly, with her chin high and dignity untouched. She turned toward the exit. Behind her, she heard Blake mutter, just loud enough. Some people really don't know their place. The doors swung open, and morning light spilled across her face. Maggie stepped outside, pulled out her phone, and made a call. The sting of humiliation faded behind the quiet resolve rising within her. Across the lot, the metallic gleam of the Azure coupe caught the light, its finish shimmering between blue and black like a mood not yet decided. Inside, something shifted. A hush fell over the showroom as the deep purr of a luxury engine rolled to a stop outside. Heads turned. Even Richard Mason stepped toward the window, drawn by the sound. "Is that?" he murmured. Blake peered out, his eyes narrowing. "The bespoke Phantom," he said with a note of awe. "Extremely rare. Fully custom configuration. That's not a car we see often, if ever." A uniformed chauffeur stepped out, walking briskly to the rear door. With precise timing and a white-gloved hand, he opened it. Out stepped a man of unmistakable presence. Tall, distinguished, and impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that radiated quiet wealth. His salt and pepper hair was expertly groomed. His posture commanded tension. Blake straightened his jacket, instinctively adjusting his smile to maximum wattage. This wasn't just a good lead, this was a wail. "Good morning, sir. Welcome to Boston Luxury Motors," Blake called out, moving swiftly to intercept. "Blake Thompson, sales manager. It's an honor to have you with us today." The man regarded him with calm detachment. His handshake was firm, his smile distant. "Alexander Collins," he said simply. Blake paused. The name was familiar, but he couldn't place it. No matter, the man drove a Rolls-Royce. That was all he needed to know. "Mr. Collins," Blake said eagerly. "What brings you in today? We've just received a limited." Alexander raised a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "I'm here for a specific vehicle, the Azure Coupe, midnight blue." Blake beamed. "An excellent selection, sir. One of only 15 in the world. I'd be honored to." "I know where it is," Alexander said, his voice cool. "My wife was here yesterday. She was interested in it." Blake's smile faltered. "Your wife? I'm afraid I don't recall. Perhaps she worked with another representative." Alexander's eyes sharpened. "No, Mr. Thompson, you spoke to her. Margaret Collins. She was wearing jeans, a white t-shirt. You told her she might prefer the used lot." The color drained from Blake's face. Behind him, Daniel sucked in a breath. "Mr. Collins, there must be some mistake. We welcome all clients here, I assure you." At that moment, Richard Mason stepped in. "Is everything all right here?" he asked, his tone a blend of curiosity and growing alarm. Alexander turned, composed as ever. "You must be Mr. Mason." "Yes, sir. Richard Mason. Welcome." Alexander offered a nod. "I was just explaining to your sales manager that my wife came here yesterday, interested in purchasing the Azure Coupe as a gift for her sister, but she was treated with less than professionalism." Richard's posture shifted. Concern edged into his features. Yes, I do recall speaking briefly with her. I wasn't aware of the full situation." Alexander nodded slowly. "Well, here's what you missed, Mr. Thompson informed her she didn't belong here because of her clothing." A quiet crowd had formed: salespeople, support staff, a few curious early customers. The air in the showroom was still, tense, electrified. "Mr. Collins," Blake began, his voice cracking with the first hint of desperation. "If there was any misunderstanding—" "It wasn't a misunderstanding," came a voice from the side. Every head turned toward Daniel. The young salesman blinked, surprised at himself, but he stood firm. Mrs. Collins was polite. She was clear about wanting the Azure. She was dismissed again and again because of how she looked. Blake's eyes flashed with fury, but the damage was already done. The silence turned heavier. Alexander turned slowly back to Richard Mason. "You know, it's interesting," he began, voice calm but loaded with meaning. "My wife is the founder of the Collins Foundation for Children with Disabilities. She built it long before I met her. She's raised more than $50 million for adaptive equipment, therapy programs, and education for kids who would otherwise fall through the cracks. He let the words hang in the air. Maggie dresses modestly because she believes in living close to the people she serves. It's one of the many reasons I married her. Richard Mason had gone noticeably pale. Mr. Collins, he stammered. I assure you, this isn't who we are. Our dealership prides itself on. Alexander cut him off, voice firmer now. Your brochures may say one thing, Mr. Mason, but actions speak louder than mission statements. A pause. As for the Azure, I'm not here to purchase just one vehicle. Blake's head lifted slightly, a flicker of hope flickering back into his eyes. I'd planned to purchase the coupe for my sister-in-law, just as Maggie wanted. But I'm also looking to replace our company fleet, 7 vehicles, and I've been considering updates to my private collection as well. Mason's jaw tensed. A transaction like that would hit quarterly sales targets in a single swoop. But then Alexander continued. However, after what I've witnessed today, I'm not sure this is the right place to make that investment. The silence was absolute. Blake looked physically stricken. Mr. Collins, Mason pleaded. Please allow me to extend our sincerest apologies. This incident is not representative of how we treat our clients. We want to make it right. Alexander paused, considering. Perhaps there's a way forward, he said finally, but it will take more than a sale to repair what's been damaged. Anything, Mason said quickly, whatever it takes. The Collins Foundation is hosting a benefit gala next month. We're raising money for a new adaptive sports complex for children with physical disabilities. He turned to Blake, who stiffened. I think Mr. Thompson's presence would be educational. Blake swallowed. Sir, not as a guest, Alexander clarified. As a volunteer, we're always in need of help. Moving equipment, assisting the kids. You'll see the work Maggie's dedicated her life to. Maybe then you'll understand the difference between appearances and worth. Blake looked like he'd been punched in the chest. And, Alexander added, addressing Mason, you might consider bringing in a consultant. Unconscious bias is real and clearly present here. Mason nodded quickly. Absolutely. We'd welcome the training. Alexander turned to Daniel, his expression softening. As for the vehicles, I'd like you to handle the paperwork, starting with the Azure. Daniel blinked. Me? Thank you, sir. It would be an honor. Good, Alexander said, nodding once. Now let's talk specifics about the fleet. As the group began to move toward Mason's office, Alexander paused beside the Azure coupe. His hand traced the smooth contour of its midnight blue body. My wife, he said with quiet pride, has excellent taste. Behind him, Blake stood, frozen, his perfect salesman's facade shattered. The lesson had landed, sharp and inescapable. It wasn't how he treated those he wanted to impress that defined him. It was how he treated those he didn't. 1 month later, the grand ballroom of the Boston Hotel pulsed with warmth and purpose. The Collins Foundation Gala had drawn an extraordinary mix of supporters. Doctors, donors, families, and the children they served. Near the entrance, wearing an event staff polo instead of a custom-tailored suit, Blake Thompson guided guests and assisted a young boy in a wheelchair. What had begun as penance had become something else. In those weeks of volunteering, Blake had seen things no amount of sales training could teach. He'd seen children overcome obstacles just to smile. He'd seen dignity in struggle, grace in hardship, and the strength of a community that saw value not in wealth, but in humanity. Across the room, Maggie approached, elegant in a simple blue dress that mirrored the coupe's color. Despite knowing exactly who she was now, Blake was struck again by her presence. Humble, unshaken, real. How are you finding the experience, Blake? She asked gently. Blake paused, considering his answer. Humbling, Blake finally said, and necessary. Maggie nodded, her expression unreadable but kind. Thomas seems to like you, she said, glancing toward the young boy in the wheelchair. He's been teaching me adaptive basketball, Blake replied with a half-smile. Apparently, I have terrible form. That drew a soft laugh from Maggie. He's a brutally honest coach. Blake's smile faded into something more earnest. Mrs. Collins, I know I've already apologized formally, but I wanted to say it face to face. I'm truly sorry for how I treated you. There's no excuse. You're right, she said without hesitation. There isn't. She didn't say it with cruelty, just quiet truth. The real question, she continued, is what you've taken from the experience. Blake looked away for a moment, then back at her. That people's worth isn't defined by their clothes, their job titles, or their wallets, he said slowly. And that respect should be the starting point, not the reward. Maggie studied him for a moment, then nodded. Good lessons, she said. Expensive ones, too, I imagine. Blake gave a rueful smile, thinking of the deal Alexander had deliberately scaled back. Worth every penny. Across the ballroom, Alexander approached, resting a hand gently on his wife's shoulder. Blake was just sharing what he's learned, Maggie said. Alexander nodded, his expression unreadable but not unkind. I hear you've become quite involved in the adaptive sports program. Yes, sir, Blake replied. I've signed on to keep volunteering beyond the initial requirement, and I've been helping Mr. Mason rework our client approach. We're ending the practice of qualifying people based on their appearance. Alexander studied him for a long moment, then said, I'm glad to hear that. He paused, then added, which reminds me, that corporate fleet I mentioned? We're still in the market. Daniel tells me you've been mentoring him. Blake blinked. You'd like me to handle it? If you're up to it, I'd be honored, Mr. Collins. Truly. Later that night, as the gala wound down and the last photos were taken, Blake stood quietly at the edge of the ballroom, watching. He observed Maggie and Alexander moving through the crowd, not as celebrities, not as symbols of power, but as people who saw others, who cared, who connected. A month ago, he would have dismissed someone like Maggie Collins with a glance. A t-shirt, scuffed sneakers, no appointment. Now he knew better. True value, he'd learned, isn't worn on the outside. It lives in character, in compassion, in conviction. He turned just in time to catch Thomas grinning up at him from his wheelchair. You know what, Mr. Blake? The boy said, you're pretty cool for a grown-up. Blake crouched beside him, smiling. Coming from you, Thomas, that means more than you know. And he meant it. We all make judgments, don't we? Based on how someone dresses, how they talk, where they come from. But sometimes, the person we overlook is the one who has the most to teach us. Just like Blake Thompson discovered, looking past appearances can uncover extraordinary people and open doors to second chances. If the story moved you, hit that subscribe button and join our community of story lovers. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever misjudged someone? Or been misjudged yourself? Your story might just inspire someone else to see more deeply. And remember, the true measure of wealth isn't what's in your account. It's how you treat people, especially when you think no one important is watching. We'll see you in the next story. Another lesson, another life changed.